What number are you dialing?
Federal.
Good evening and welcome to the School Building Committee meeting for March 26, 2013. Based on advice from Town Council, as related to us through Mike Farrell, we have posted an agenda for tonight that clearly states that the School Building Committee will be discussing and voting on whether to file a formal site plan review application. This action was taken to cure a potential technical violation of the open meeting law from our previous meeting as identified by legal counsel. As a first item on the agenda, we will welcome public comment at this time. However, please note that we will limit the conversation to the pros and/or the cons of submitting a site plan to the planning board, and will limit each comment to 2 minutes. We will not be discussing the committee process. That has been guided by legal counsel.
Is there a written opinion?
Would you like to come forward and make a comment, Mr. Rich?
Like, I just have a question. Is there
This is a
written
comments.
opinion?
This is comments. We're not taking questions and answers right now.
Oh, okay. Could you?
Don't ask a question.
I didn't really understand the motion that she made about it being open meeting law was violated. That's what I just.
If you have any questions about that, you can feel free to talk to our town administrator about it separately.
Oh.
Gentlemen, you know, the comments, really, let's conduct a professional meeting.
Professional, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so
Let's not go
Rogue,
there.
Harry, please. Otherwise, I'm gonna call Donnie over here and have you guys removed. We're gonna have a civil discussion here. We're all residents
You
of this
telling us
town.
we're breaching the peace, Mr. Chairman?
Maybe,
Oh,
yeah,
well, why don't you invite the police over right
Yep.
now? Let them witness it.
Chris, we're all in
Please,
this
David.
together.
Don't make idle
Well, you
threats.
don't have to be, comments under the
I
breath,
asked a simple
It's just-
question. If the opinion was in writing.
conduct yourself accordingly, period. Thank you.
Act- Harry, as chair of the planning board, I'd just like to ask, it seems you have 3 members present, which might constitute a quorum, if you have a posted agenda for tonight.
No, we do not, because we're here as individual members and citizens, and we will not deliberate at this meeting.
Okay, so noted. Okay, would anybody like to come forward and make a public comment? Yeah, Mr. Fowler, please
Yes.
state, yes, please state your name.
Gary Fowler, 419 North Street. I would like to encourage the board to go in front of to follow the process, to go in front of the planning board on this. I would state past projects, the library being the closest, that is having issues with water, and it came up that it's a manhole that was supposed to be there, and the drainage was to go into the manhole, but the manhole isn't there. Now, I don't know whether they followed the process. Okay? I would go back to when Mass School Building Authority came out and toured the 3 schools. I was there for that tour. Many of the problems that came up, I would say 75% of the problems that they associated were associated, some of them with drainage, flooding at the at the gymnasium, flooding at the high school, at the gymnasium. I don't know if this process was the same way at that time, also. But going on the past history of those 2 things that I just mentioned, the flooding issues, 3 flooding issues, I really think that this town and this planning board deserves to go that way. You're talking about a large project, and I fail to see. I have heard that perhaps you think you're gonna save $30,000 or something with the figure I think I heard on a $47 million project. I think you're better off to go in front of the planning board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope I was civil.
You are.
Yeah, we open it up to the committee?
I'd actually like to wait until we get to our discussion
Okay.
and see if there's anyone else from the public who would like to make a comment at this time.
Madam Chair. Christopher Rich, 292 Andover Street. As we said before,
Would you like to see?
Yes, please. It's not going to cost the school any more money or take any more time for this to be brought before the planning board. As a matter of fact, it will take less time, and it will save you money. And that's proven. Your project was before the Conservation Commission at its last meeting. The ANRAD, which is right here, the application, was filed. It could have gone to the next step. No one from your architect or your project managers were there to proceed to the next step with the Concom. So it got continued to April. Had this been at the planning board, our first meeting, it would get sent right out to the engineer. Period. He'd already be working on it. Right after the first meeting, it goes right out to the engineer. It costs no more money. We have no agenda at the planning board other than for this to be built right. All of the rumors that I'm hearing about people think we're looking for power, we're looking for this, that, and the other thing, it's just not true. My fear, if the stormwater management is not done correctly, you have the potential of putting Elm Street underwater from there to the center of town. You have that potential with the amount of land that you're using, the amount of trees that you're taking, the potential runoff. If it's not done right, all those homes on Elm Street are in jeopardy. We've done it before, it's worked. The Concom, which has stormwater management, has never done it before. The height of the building, from what I'm told, and I haven't seen the prints, it's 40 feet high. That exceeds the town allowed maximum height on any building in town. It's not a zoning bylaw, it's a height restriction. The only board in this town that can waive that height restriction is the planning board, not the building inspector. He does not have the authority. It lies within the planning board. We are just a group of people trying to do the right thing. We have no agenda. The voters of the town have voted that this school is going to be done. That's a given. We want to make sure it's done right. And we want to make sure it's done in the most cost-effective manner. So we're not going to hold up anybody at the planning board. Or at least this member's going to do his best not to let it be held up at the planning board over minuscule items and foolishness. So I hope the board members understand that.
Okay, Mr. Rich, you've been exceeded the 2 minutes.
Oh, that's all we're allowed is 2 minutes?
Can we ask questions?
2 minutes for a lawyer is very difficult.
That's not bad.
But we give you 4.
I'd really like
Point
to
of
know-
order.
Questions?
I'd really
You
not
don't allow
to,
questions? I mean,
when we get into discussion, if there's questions that we need to
have
ask
some
into
technical
the.
questions.
This is about board, I have a question about board procedure. Do we have to, Madam Chair?
Wait a minute, before you ask, Michelle's
Okay.
is
Okay.
running it tonight.
May I speak? If we're gonna follow parliamentary procedure, aren't we supposed to vote on a time limit? Or is this something, is
I believe as chair, I have the right to set the time limit.
that right, Mike?
Is that correct, Mike?
Unless overruled by the board.
Okay. Just trying to see if we got a democratic process here.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment at this time?
I would. Doug Dawes, Fort Dodge Avenue. I would just like you all to encourage you all to go before the planning board. This is a public project. We've seen, as it has been stated several times in the last couple of meetings anyhow, we've seen where projects that haven't gone before the planning board have met with many problems, especially with water. The public wants, as Mr. Rich said, the public voted on, and the school will be built. Why not use the planning board's expertise? Also, by not doing so, there's been comments saying, well, what don't you want them to see? I don't know, but why give the appearance of, what's the word, hiding something or whatever? So I would encourage you all to vote, I mean, you did last time, vote on the, going to the planning board and let them do the job. They're part of the community. Let's not ostracize them just because the law says you're not required to. Because that, to me, that's not a good enough reason not to. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Is there anybody else?
Harry Locatelli, 144 Jewett Street. I also have the distinction of being the chair of the Georgetown Planning Board. There's a little bit of irony to this, I have to admit. If any of you, as individuals, as citizens and homeowners in the town, if any of you heard that, I don't know, Walmart or GE or some development concern was coming in and gonna take a 50-acre parcel of land, redevelop and knock down the building on part of it and strip out 15+ acres of trees, I think you'd all, as individuals, be hoping that the planning board review that project with a certain degree of scrutiny. And, well, you are that developer. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anybody else? No? All right, at this time, I would like to close out the public comment, move on to our next agenda item, which is approval of our minutes from the last meeting of March 12th, 2013.
And before we get into these minutes, I thought the point of this meeting was to discuss the vote. And that's
No,
why this was rescheduled, that this was a special meeting.
It's to
scheduled.
discuss whether or not to file or not file the application
Right,
to the
so
planning board.
What I'd like
Correct.
to suggest is that these minutes be tabled and that we focus on just that one issue.
Okay, are you making a motion?
Make a motion to table the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fine.
Opposed?
Opposed. No reason why we can't just take 2 minutes to do the
I
minutes.
don't see.
If I'm not
Let's see what
mistaken, if I'm not mistaken.
it's 2 minutes.
Well, I think it opens up a can of worms because there are a bunch of questions about the minutes, so it doesn't take just 2 minutes necessarily. But also, I think Robert's rules are pretty clear that if this is rescheduled for one particular, if it's a special meeting called for one issue, that's the agenda.
But she
No,
set the-
it's
she set
on the
agenda.
agenda.
The agenda was set and
No,
posted.
but the meeting was called for the voting issue, for the vote issue. That's what the meeting was scheduled for. It wasn't scheduled for that and the minutes.
It was scheduled for whatever that's posted.
It's-
Right.
So, but I can see your point. There could be material in there that,
It's gonna take more than.
yeah, okay.
It's good just to focus.
Yeah.
Just focus.
I voted no.
Okay.
I voted no.
Did you get that vote? What, did you get the vote?
2 noes to 2.
Who knows?
Do we have 10 here? Okay. Next on the agenda is correspondence. So as a result of the last meeting, Mike had forwarded the attorney letters that we will, that were requested that he forward, and I believe everybody got them, the letters from Copeland Page. Correct?
Madam Chair, did we skip invoices?
We don't have any invoices. So yes, we did skip it around, there were invoices. Okay, so, which will lead us to our next discussion item, which is discussion and vote on filing a planning board site plan approval application. As I mentioned prior in public comment, we'll limit this conversation to the pros and the cons of filing this, submitting the site plan application to the planning board. We won't be discussing the committee process. So at this time, the chair would like to entertain a motion to have DRA file for a site plan review for the planning board.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. Is there a discussion?
Sure, this
Is it-
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, I'd just like to poll, how many people here have been in front of the planning board, and how many have been in front of the Conservation Commission? Or seen a Conservation Commission, or seen a planning board here?
Conservation.
Both. Both.
Does, you mean like watched on TV or had an agenda item?
Watching.
What you want.
Participated in one way or another.
Yeah.
Whether it's popcorn and a glass of wine.
No, I've participated, I've gone in front of the Concom, I've gone in front of the planning board, you know. So I think I speak anyhow from some experience. So I just want to know what everybody's experience is and how they can make a determination of what is better to go in front of, or where if any prejudice has been developed. You know, I think there's some things being left unsaid, and I just want to know why people's prerogatives to go in front of one or the other. So that could open this discussion. So.
Personally, I've had interaction with the planning board as a citizen, and it was a positive experience. Again, not every, and as Mr. Rich may have alluded to, that, you know, maybe not everybody in town is happy with planning board at times. There always has to be a backstop for the town, and sometimes people don't want to hear, you know, this is the way it is. And even to maybe, you know, Concom's defense. I haven't gone in front of Concom, but I've been there for, you know, multiple meetings. And, you know, somebody has to be the gatekeeper in all this. And, you know, again, some people here, some people in town may have had bad experiences. You know, I can't speak for that. All I know is, you know, and I'm with Gary on this, this is the largest project we have in town. And for me, whether you like, or you dislike, or you think planning board overreaches, or you think Concom overreaches, I don't even think that's part of the issue. For me, it isn't. They're the board that should weigh in on this. I think every board in town should have their chance to weigh in on this project. It's a ton of money. There could be something that these guys miss that they're going to pick up. Now, I do have my concerns about reasonableness. And we've talked about this at the last meeting. You know, suggestions for the project have to be reasonable, and the political piece of it can't enter the equation. There has to be a real good reason for a change. For me, anyway, you know, a reasonable request is a reasonable request. You know, changing the height of the building at this point in time, to me, is not a reasonable request. We've been, what, 2 years now? The drawings have been done. We've done public comment. We've had meetings, beyond meetings. Come as a citizen, come as a board member. You know, that's not a reasonable request as far as I'm concerned. And that issue came up tonight concerns me a little bit, because we really haven't talked about the height of the building. It was more the water, and I agree, we have water issues in town. And I haven't experienced them personally, but I can tell you, a lot of the businesses, big people that I speak to, you know, in that downtown area are concerned about water. So, you know, I do have some technical questions that I would like to ask, if you're going to allow it, to the conservation agent. I'd like to get one question out. But for me, this should go in front of site plan review. And we're going to hold them to their word. They're going to speed up the project and help us through the project, make their suggestions, and any suggestions are going to be reasonable. People are not going to play with, well, I didn't vote for the project, so therefore I want the building to be 38 feet and, you know, 8 inches, or whatever that, you know, crazy, unreasonable request is. If it's unreasonable, I'm going to be the first one that gets up and jumps up and down and screams all over town with a sandwich board walking up and down, dump the planning board because they're being unreasonable. But for now, for me, it should go in front of them. That's just me, but that's where I stand. But I do have a question for the conservation agent. Can I ask him?
Go ahead.
Steve, you there?
Sir.
So, this goes to site plan review, planning board.
Steve, can you just identify who you are, please?
Steve Brzezowski, conservation agent.
Okay, so the way I've been led to understand this is that we're gonna give this to, if we do site plan review, it goes to planning board. They're gonna do all the water calculations or whatever that, you know, all that water research. You guys gonna rely on what their engineer says, or you're gonna make us do the work again?
Whether the planning board or the Concom gets it, the same person's gonna review it to the same extent.
Okay.
Exactly. We're not gonna double up. If you decide tonight to go to the planning board,
Right.
we'll deal with our wetland regulations, you know, erosion, the stuff we normally do.
Right. So if it goes to planning board, will that speed up the process in your opinion? If they do all these water calculations?
I don't have an opinion on that, to be honest with you. I don't see how.
We'd have to do them anyways? Wouldn't we have to do them anyways?
It's gonna get done either way. I don't know how it speeds it up or slows it down. Can they, you know, fax it over to Larry Graham, get an estimate back faster than I? Maybe 5 minutes. I don't think it's a huge savings one way or another when it comes to time, but that's just
Steve,
my
how
opinion.
often do you guys meet?
Once a month. We are able to book more often, but right now, with the caseload we have, once a month works just fine. Historically, we've gone to two times a month, you know, when the caseload requires it.
If I'm not mistaken, last hearing, there's a case where you had to invoke the Mullen Rule, where two people weren't present to hear that we're at a hearing before.
Correct.
And so that hearing had to be continued
Correct.
for another month because
Correct.
those two members had to be able to sit on. So, I mean, there's been I don't know what the schedule are, but there's been, you know, some members who can't always make.
Correct. We just
And
picked
then-
up we have a full board right now.
We just helped
We're
one
one
time.
short.
We just appointed a new person,
for,
so it helps. So, okay, so my question is answered. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Can I ask a question following up on that?
Sure.
If the planning board, if the board decides to go to the planning board, the site approval process takes the place of that bylaw, the erosion and stormwater bylaw.
Okay.
It would, either way, whether it goes to the commission or the planning board, my understanding of that bylaw
Yeah.
is either way, it does not have to go to the erosion control bylaw.
Right.
With one department or not, so whether you go one way or
It's
another.
one or the
either
other.
way, the erosion control is gonna be dealt with by one department.
Right, right.
And actually, at this point, I think if it goes to both, my understanding based on the bylaw, and I haven't read it lately, is that it would go to the Concom, not the planning board. If it goes to both, the Concom handles the stormwater issues. No, I'm sorry, the
No.
erosion control.
The erosion part of it, yeah. So
So either way, the Concom's gonna get.
see, it's such a new bylaw that
Well,
the regs and everything isn't established and on their board yet.
we do not have regulations regarding that. We do have a
Right.
bylaw that specifies the Concom.
Right.
But it's a town project, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't look at projects, whether it's a town or not town, we look at the same, you know, we have the same
Right.
process.
Okay, Eric?
Yeah, I voted 2 weeks ago for plan site approval. Because out of respect for the planning board and the fact that another set of eyes. During that discussion, you know, I was torn between the reasonable, under the belief that the Dover law, and I've read more into it, did more than it actually does, I guess, to some degree. But felt that the planning board and another set of eyes was a positive thing. The one disconnect was, in my mind, we were always and would always use the planning board as a set of eyes and as a guidance to this board. I don't know any of it. I'm not an expert or experienced as our planning board is. So in my mind, that was always going to be the process. We would, you know, the data that's collected by the engineers and the consultants would be given to the planning board. The planning board would review it, give the recommendations. So what it came down to was who had the final decision as to, I guess, what was reasonable, what was unreasonable, and how that process would work. Rambled a little bit there, lost my train of thought a little bit there. So,
Complicated.
and if you remember, I asked a lot of questions. why the planning board, I asked a few, then we got derailed on some questions, why the planning board still couldn't be completely involved in the process. You know, Harry at one point said you guys wouldn't have the venue to do that. Never quite understood what that meant, and looked for some clarity today and asked some questions around that, because I went home wondering what that meant. But still feel that no matter what this turnout would be, I mean, why wouldn't we use the experts in our town? Why wouldn't our experts in town be involved in helping guide us through this big major project? So it comes down to, I guess, who has the final say on what's reasonable, what's not, to keep the timeline of the project moving forward on a timely fashion. And while, you know, this board has worked hard for the last couple of years as well. So, you know, there's a part of me that's torn that says, you know, why doesn't this board keep that decision as to what is the final, what's reasonable, what's not? And I, you know, no matter how the vote would go tonight, I would be adamant, and I would be, you know, you said you'd be jumping up and down what's not reasonable on that side.
Right.
I would be jumping up and down why we're not getting the data to the planning board, why isn't the planning board giving their input, and why, especially on the major things, on the water drainage and water runoff and all that, and I think there's 3 or 4 major points. I'd love to separate them off. I don't know how that's done, and say,
It is done.
you know, and then we don't have that gray area of the reasonable, the height of the building, whatever. To me, it's all about protecting the residents, the abutters, the people in town from any major issues that could occur. So
Can that be done?
I don't know how a compromise
You get
is.
that, you saw that long application. Right, and there's issues on there that you just put non-applicable, you know, there'll be an NA, that's how
Yeah, but
the applicant
just
fills
out of
in.
clarification, I mean, whether you write down not applicable or not, does
well,
the
they'll,
board feel, the board will come back and tell you if it is applicable or not,
oh,
right?
yeah, they will,
Yeah,
we
okay.
will, of course. But I mean, that's the application process.
So I think what he's saying, if I'm hearing you right, first I'm hearing of it and everybody else is too, is that either why can't the board jump on board with us, no pun intended, but jump on board with us and help us out without having to go through a formal approval process, because we're looking for their expertise, not their approval. Or if that can't be done, then can it be set forth to the planning board that only certain things are on the table for their review and approval?
Can that
So
be
those are
done?
two
That's
questions.
a good question.
It
Can
probably
that be
could.
done?
Isn't that,
Well, let-
isn't the process for that, where they come before the board and they have a request of waivers? It's a list,
Right,
and they ask for a
Right.
waiver on building height, the planning board grants it.
yeah.
No
Yeah,
issue.
but you understand what you just said, is that you go before the board and you
Yeah.
ask if you can get a waiver.
Right.
Right.
So
So-
we're asking before.
So we're not, what I'm wondering is A, can't they just come in? Isn't there a mechanism in this town to stop the bureaucracy and just let the people come and help us that are the experts on this, and we all work together? If that can't be done, the next step is, can't we allow for the planning board to come in only on certain issues to help us and have an approval? And then obviously the third one is to give them the full rights for everything.
I don't know if that can be done. I mean, do we want to,
Can it?
do we
never
ask
been
Harry
done.
that?
That's
He's
a,
the
that's a
chair.
question. I
It's a
honestly
fair
don't know.
ABC
Harry's the
layout, I
chairperson.
believe.
Harry, can you answer that question?
I don't know the venue under which you would do that, because this isn't a subdivision.
Yeah, let me ask a different way then, Harry. Is there a venue,
OSRD.
is there anything that precludes that venue? Because looking for a venue to allow you to do it is one thing. I mean, I work with codes all the time. I don't necessarily look in the code to say what I'm allowed to do. Sometimes I look and say what I'm not allowed to do. So,
Well,
or
I-
vice
I
versa.
don't- I'm
So,
not aware of the.
is there anything to say you can't do this?
Gee whiz, there's nothing to say that we can't all stand on our heads either. I
No,
mean,
but that's I'm not, it's not a joke of a question. It's a true question.
No, I'm sorry I can't answer that, because there is no mechanism in the bylaws that allows this drive-by review.
I'm not talking about a drive-by review, I'm talking about a very specific review
Limited review.
of specific things.
Right.
It's all very clearly what the site plan review is all very clear,
Okay.
what the.
I just wanna know.
So it's
But
either
why-
all or nothing.
Can I ask a
Just say it's
question?
all or nothing there.
Yeah, so what about A? What about point A?
Bylaw.
Well,
Not,
theoretically, I mean, just from my understanding, I don't know all of this. I wasn't at the meeting last time, and I do know some of it, but I don't know a lot, as most of us don't know a lot of it. But my understanding is it's not a bylaw necessarily that we have to change. I mean, we don't. My understanding is that the state has set this up and ruled that we do not have to go and do this. So I think it's great we're all together. Don't get me wrong, I think it's great. And I would love to be able to work together as two committees or boards, work together to get this school done correctly. First of all, I don't have any doubt in my own mind that it won't be anyways, but I think that more ears are sometimes better. But I just don't understand why we can't get past the bureaucracy of everybody needing to have power of a vote when all we're all trying to do is build this school for the town. And what we're trying to do is to get everybody's opinion that has expertise. So I just don't understand it.
Well put, Jeff.
I just look at the process that's been followed, or hasn't been followed, and we've had what I consider failed projects. So we've gone through that process before, and the results have been we're addressing them again. We're doing a do-over. I mean, my understanding is the planning board is kind of like a decision maker, an information gatherer. They say, bring in your plans, let's see what our comments are from our different committees, and we make decisions on if these ideas are good.
Love it. It'd be great.
I mean, the process we've been following hasn't worked, in my opinion. If we have to spend millions of dollars to do them again. So if you want, I mean, I think the process was when they brought up the library. Dave said, "Oh, it did go under review."
It did.
It was in the minutes.
to
And
prove
then
it.
Rob said, "Wait a second, they came by for the drive-by site plan review."
Say that, that's not fair, David, that's not, David, I know you have the minutes.
Can
Do we
only
wanna
go by
get-
what I see, Rob.
do we
I wasn't there.
do we-
I give it the benefit of the doubt. I
All
wasn't
right,
there.
So then
can we
please don't bring
please
it
not
up
talk
again.
about the library right now? Let's
So-
focus on the school and the discussion at hand. Okay,
So,
please.
so let's break it down a little bit. If we go in for, let's take stormwater, okay? And Carl, I'm gonna need your help on this, because I'm gonna ask you some questions, if I may, Madam Chairman. When we go through this process, we will have our engineer that the town has hired design it, okay, right? And then we will submit it will we submit it to a reviewing engineer for the town?
Not directly, but by submitting it to the Conservation Commission already.
Then they will put it
They,
through.
submit
Okay.
it to a peer review, independent
So-
Only
engineer.
for certain parts though, Dave, Jeff.
Yeah,
Only for
that's-
small- Only for small parts that the.
Stormwater management, he was asking
Stormwater.
about.
Yeah, I was asking for
Stormwater.
stormwater.
Which is the major part.
Which is the
Stormwater management.
major.
Go ahead. It's only a portion of it. The review that goes to the technical review agent for stormwater management is based on evaluating reams of, and you've seen them, of the calculations and verifying that those are correct. And it's a cursory review to make sure that the grading is in place, that things aren't, that they're consistent with the watersheds that the document is suggesting they are.
Okay.
It doesn't get into whether things are done good or bad or not, or this, it's a very bare bones
limited.
review.
It's limited.
And the planning board make sure it's done right or wrong?
What happens with the planning board is it goes to the planning board and they give it to the technical review agent, not only to review that.
The same
but
person?
The technical
It's the
review
same.
agent reviews then everything. The technical review agent then reviews the design, he reviews whether the system that's being proposed underneath raises questions for him. He looks at everything.
So why can't we do that?
Why can't we hire
Why
a
can't we,
technical review?
when we hire the
agent?
guy, why can't we do that?
Can we pose that question to Steve,
No, no,
please?
seriously.
Jeff, why don't you ask our conservation
Carl.
agent?
Yeah.
Oh,
Have Steve comment on that.
We could. the commission could.
Okay.
Mhm.
So my point is that now we've gone through the process in a different way, but through the process to go to the exact process that we would do if we submitted. We'll get the opinion of the engineer for the town for all the things that we would normally be getting it for.
And when do you want this done by?
Carl has the schedule.
I mean, we're doing it through the
Have-
Concom.
We
We are doing it through the Concom, so there's a
have you
process
worked-
that'll be done.
Have you worked with the Conservation Commission on their schedule, to talk to them, to understand if their schedule
Our
is
engineer,
part-
right, has filed already the ANRAD for the delineation of the wetlands, and is intending to file the notice of intent, I think it's around April 12th, to be on the agenda for the April 25th meeting. We know it's not going to get closed and resolved at that meeting. Our schedule allows it to continue for 2 more months, May and June,
Okay.
and still meet the bid date and the 100% construction drawings that can incorporate their order of conditions.
Okay, and Steve, you've talked, have you guys talked, so that schedule is workable for both sides?
Well, again, you know, you can't
in front of them.
project, you know,
Yeah.
what the issues are gonna be, whether meetings get closed, there are quorums and that sort of thing, but we've allowed for, you know, that number of meetings.
Extra 2 months, right?
So that's an extra 2 months.
It's built in.
It's built
So
into.
are you thinking that the emergency access would be part of this review? Or are you talking just stormwater? Are you talking lighting and photometrics as part of this review, or are you talking just stormwater?
Well, right now I'm talking just
So-
stormwater.
Okay, okay.
I mean, I think that's some of the big issues here, and if we find that there's other issues, see, this is where, you know, if we could just get together and talk through this and meet. I mean, actually, you know, it'd be nice, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to upset anybody, but I believe you're here as a citizen and not an official representative of the planning board. Now, at one point, we had,
She,
are you
she's here
or
as
not?
a planning board.
I don't know. Let me ask.
At this meeting? I mean, they're there as citizens, she's here as a planning board
She's here
representative.
as a,
Every
As
correspondence that went
represents
to the MSBA
Okay, so you're.
has Tilly
okay, so you're
Evangelist, a
fine.
planner.
Right, right.
That's all I can tell you.
Right.
You said,
Hold
but
on one
the
second.
position
Mike.
isn't required.
No, I just asked
Yeah.
a question. So she is, so you're the official person for the planning board,
Right.
which I think's great. And that's what we should do, and we should get the two groups together and go through this and see if there's any other issues besides erosion and water.
Why would we do this again?
For the good of the town.
For the good of the
I
project.
mean, why would we do this? It sounds to me like you don't want a formal process, right? And you're afraid of the vote.
No, those are your words.
Oh,
Those are
I thought
totally
I
yours.
heard that from you.
Did I say that they're afraid of the vote?
You're concerned about the conditions and that would be voted. Is that better?
I'm thinking, I'm just asking the question, why can't we get rid of bureaucracy and work together on a project like the town wants you to?
Your quotes, if I can quote that, and I think it should be in the minutes, we hear frequently from developers. I mean, that's a standard. Nothing would please them better if
This
there
is-
was no formal process.
But this is entirely, that's not what I'm saying, and that's entirely different. That's entirely different. I'm sorry.
I'm just being truthful.
No, I am too, and I think that's totally wrong.
Mike had a comment.
oh, sorry, Mike, go
How do
ahead.
we get-
I'm sorry, hold on, Mike had his hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to George's comments. When you were saying how the past projects haven't turned out so well.
That's pretty proven. huh?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but did the past projects like the school, the high school wasn't, well, my question is, did the projects have a owner's project manager on staff for the town?
I'm not aware they did. I think this is pretty new.
Yes, they did.
Right.
This is the
Okay,
first
that's
project.
my point then.
They did.
This process
No, they had a
that
clerk
we're
of the
going
works.
through
That's different.
is
It's
different
totally different.
than any other process we've gone through. And that's one of the, I gotta believe, that's one of the reasons, well, number one, why MSBA requires it, so we don't screw up as badly as we have in the past. and that's why they don't make us go to.
So I think the library
planning
had
board.
a.
Well, they're protecting their money.
Yeah, of course they are.
The OPM, while it is a different process, I would add, is not an engineer. And they are not a second set of eyes in terms of engineering. So it is not different in that regard. It is exactly the same as all the others.
I don't see how you can say that.
They're not engineers. They're not engineers. They don't review the drawings for design radiuses, for
Chuck
design
answered
tangents,
that.
they don't do any of that.
But hence, it's not the same, it's a different process.
Well, they
There's
don't
no
do it.
logical connection with that.
The logical
Statement.
connection is a second set of eyes. They're not the second set of eyes because they're not
But we're
qualified
getting
to
a,
do it.
we're gonna get a second set of eyes.
We do have a second set of eyes
We are getting a
from
second set of
the
eyes.
technical engineer from the town, whether we go through the planning board or conservation. We do have that second set of eyes.
Well, you do for, right now, you have it for stormwater calculations and stormwater management. You don't have it for the project.
Yeah.
But again, going to
But we
You
Jeff's,
have it for the project. Be very clear.
Hey, this would be a great subject, to all sit around the table and come up with a list, and then have our engineers look at that, and then so we can protect ourselves. You know, I mean, this is the kind of input we need.
I think Matthew, I can't help but say I was very proud to hear my selectmen take the positions that they took. Because I think stepping back, there's a bigger issue here, and I think the issue goes to the form of town government and the structure of town government. If someone here can give me an example of a project that has been successful, that has avoided the planning board the way we're trying to do in full review, a public town project, please let me know. The history, which is avoiding planning board, we had a 40B apartment project, avoided planning board, could have gone, didn't. A guardrail was placed in front of a fire hydrant. The fire people had to cut the guardrail in order to get access to the hydrant. That cost potential lives. It didn't. A serious health, safety, welfare issue. The library came in front of the planning board one night. All the drawings were done. It was not a review, David. It came in front of the planning board. I was the chairman at the time. It came in front of the board, and in fact, one of my comments, I remember saying, well, could you try to do this? It never happened, but the fact of the matter is, it was not reviewed by the planning board. And we ended up with water going into the front door. I don't know if anybody can comprehend how silly that one is, but that's the case. And if you go there today, you might notice a little tiny hand pump that's been placed in a bucket beside the catch basin that's supposed to be catching the water coming down, and there's this cord that runs into the building to keep this thing pumped out so that water doesn't go in. The Public Works building, the roof that went on had a leak, had to be fixed. And all of these are being done with the best intentions of the town. I'm not suggesting that these projects are trying to do anything that's not the best intention of the town. I want to be really clear about that. Another project, the roof had to be replaced. The roof was a residential nature roof versus a commercial. Again, avoided planning board or getting that kind of, and the middle high school fell into the same camp. Review went by the planning board process. I was fortunate to be groomed into the planning board by Jack Moultrie, and I learned a lot of the history of that project from him, and it was the same process. And what you're suggesting is that we are going to repeat the exact same process. In construction, problems are not, they might happen. They're gonna happen. That's almost a fact. I think Jeff would agree with me. That is construction. You're gonna have problems. And to have a second set of eyes is the way this town government is set up. I mean, this really boils down to an issue of trust. It really boils down to an issue of one board not trusting another board, in my opinion. And I think we have a town government that is set up where the planning board is the group that is put together for it to go through, and we've yet to do it as a town. And I hate to see on this the largest project in the history of the town, we're gonna repeat history.
Carl, can you just give us a very brief review of the things that you do? You know, with especially with the stormwater and things like that, as far as review and the people that you have on the site, and as we're going through, you know, this development stage and the construction stage.
Well, first of all, yeah, the design is done by engineers, meeting, you know, both state requirements and local bylaws. The process, you know, in this case, it involves at least the Conservation Commission, who has jurisdiction over wetlands. The plans and specifications are reviewed independently by, you know, the stormwater management calculations are reviewed independently by an engineer. And then, I don't know if you're asking during construction, at the beginning of construction, because this is a public project, our entire design team has to put forth affidavits that the building was designed to code, and we're going to be part of the process during construction to ensure that it gets built according to the drawings, and we are to alert the town, the building inspector, if there are any changes. So during the course of the project, we file periodic reports. We make periodic visits to the site, in addition to the owner's project manager, who will have full-time presence at the site. And at the end of the project, we have to sign off that the project was built according to the plans. So, I mean, that's our oversight. That's what you're asking, Michelle.
There's also with the state, with the new process they have for building permits and affidavits and things that require the architect and the engineers to provide, and the contractor, to provide well, at first there's a sit down with the town, with the building department of the town. You guys should hear this because it, you know, may affect some of you guys, but and there's a list. There's a list of items that have to be reviewed and tested as you go along on this project, and it requires, you know, written feedback to the town that it passed. And
independent testing.
And they go independent testing. So they go through and they check all these things off. So that's another moment. This is brand new. It's another moment where the town gets to have a little say in all the areas that they may have had problems with before or very concerned about, and they check those off. And it's a requirement that the architect and the project actually provides that. It's either through third-party testing, which the owner, the town, would hire, the owner, I should say, would hire, or it's things that the architect or the structural engineer or mechanical engineer would have to verify and attest to it. So,
but it's independent?
It's well, like I said, there's part of it's independent, like testing of concrete, testing of steel, you know, reinforcing rods, steel,
soil compaction,
all these other things. And then you get the architect with certain things too, with fire ratings of partitions and edges of slabs and things like that. So there's a myriad of items and that get addressed. So I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing for the town, and to understand waterproofing, you know, things like that. All
in addition to on school projects.
I think that that check that you're talking about is basically just saying that what is taking place is consistent with the drawings. Correct?
Which is well, there's two aspects of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So
of your issue, and one of them, yes, you do need good design to begin with.
So where's the second check on that?
Where's the second check of that? Well, it comes in a couple places. I'm going to let you take some of it, but part of it is with the third-party engineering that the town. We already talked about that for the water.
And again, we've already made it very clear that it's a very small piece of the pie. So
but it can be
again,
as much as we want it.
Well, we don't know if we can do that yet, but that's possible.
It's possible. It's possible. Absolutely.
But there's also,
worried about it.
In addition to the full-time presence on the project, who again are reviewing the project, that it's consistent with the plans. The MSBA pays for independent commissioning agents that cover, you know, a wide breadth of things nowadays, not just mechanical systems, but building envelopes, windows,
and again, this might be
roofs.
pie in the sky, but still, and why can't
goes beyond
the
just
planning
drawings.
board also be another set of eyes on that? I mean, why can't this information all be given to them? And they are another set of eyes on this. As a member of this town, as a board in this town, working to make sure we get the school built right.
Michelle, I want to get back to that.
And I guess, because we passed by that's pie in the sky thinking, but, Jeff's, we talked about it a little bit 10 minutes ago, and I don't know why that isn't still an element of the whole process.
Well-
No matter which way this vote goes tonight.
Well, I think, I mean, it seems like there's so many issues that are worth a second set of eyes. I mean, that after a while, you get to the point where hiring a separate consultant to do that work, two things come up for me. One is a complete lack of regard for the process with the planning board and the way the system of government is set up. And two, the notion of slowing down the process. I can't imagine that a consultant is gonna be able to respond as fast as the planning board would be to getting a set of drawings.
I don't know.
think that
That's not true.
I think that would slow down. the
You hire an engineer to, with all due respect, you hire an engineer to do the work, you're hiring them on the side, and whether it's, the chair of the planning board or the architect or the chair of the building committee, they hold their paycheck and they have to hold their feet to the fire. So you know as well as I do that they have to respond to that. So I don't think that's an issue. I do think though that the thing I'm struggling with is I want the feedback from people from the different committees in this town. Absolutely, I'm 100% with you on that, Dave. 100% with you on that. But I also feel that I get worried when I do hear some comments like the height of the building or other things like that, and I don't think that this is the time for that. I think that boat has sailed, and I think that that we are following a process. You said that we're totally disregarding the process. We aren't. We are actually following the state process. It happens to be in conflict with what people think in the town. So I just want to make that clear. And so I'm really struggling with this. I honestly am struggling with this. And I mean, no matter which way this vote goes, excuse me, no matter which way this vote goes, I am struggling with, I don't think either answer, a yes or no, is the right answer. I think it's one of the options that I had mentioned in the three options that we have. I think it's either the help or the limited review, and we can agree on something with that. I don't think it's black and white, and so I'm having a hard time in either case with this thing right now because it's not a black and white question or answer to me.
It's not. All right, hold on, Peter had a question. Hold on, Peter had a question.
This site review, it'll take 60 days to do?
Yeah, when it's completed,
When
when
it's
all of the
complete.
information is presented.
So if they gave it to you in May, it would be done by July?
Yep.
And who files for the extensions on the review? Is
They
it,
would, the applicant.
It's a joint thing, I think.
It's a joint, we have to, if there's an issue that he doesn't have information that he should have had and he thought he had, whatever it may be,
so it could take longer than 60 days for
he
this?
would, well, that's the thing, that, I'm not expecting that because we've got a professional here. So I'm not expecting any delays. The site approval process has a list of things to bring. If it doesn't pertain to the development, they put on it non-applicable, or they request special waivers if it is something that should be.
And the clock starts ticking the moment this application is complete.
Right.
And they're required by law to have their answer by a certain point in time. That eludes me. I'm not sure what it is.
Actually, I have a question for Harry, because Carl has actually asked me this a couple of times. In the site plan application, there's a lot of may and may nots. You may or may not require this, and Carl probably has looked at it a little more in detail than I have. When do we know what may or may not be required?
As soon as Carl brings that information to Howard.
Okay, so we can't find out before, if we were to file a site application, we won't know that before we file the site application.
Well, I was actually hoping that after the vote last week, and I'm not bringing up the vote last week, that the next day or the day after one of the DRA, is it DRA?
DRA, yes.
One of the DRA representatives would have visited Howard Snyder. This is Howard Snyder, the town planner. And he's taking time out of his own time to be here tonight. He's in the north.
Thank you, Howard.
Thanks, Howard.
Steve is here too.
To get back
And
to,
Steve is here,
That's
I mean.
that's just to show you, there's a lot of cooperation that I don't think is coming through here. I really don't think you're getting it. I don't think it's the amount of cooperation that, it's an invitation. It's an invitation.
can I clear that up, because he seems to be having a problem, which he admitted. Wait, are you playing it wrong? Am I saying something inaccurate?
No, I may be committed by the end of tonight. I don't know, I meant to the vote.
A week ago, I think it was a week ago. 2 weeks is quick. A week ago, we went to, the three of us and our planner went to a training session at Holy Cross. Spent the whole day Saturday. And we particularly a couple of us went to the exception room for the 40A, all right, for the site review process. And the attorneys gave it. They clearly said that the planning board in a site review does not design the building. And she went into the reasonableness, and she cited cases and whatnot. And my question to her was, now, can I give you an example of, say, this particular building is going to be 40 feet and our bylaws are 35. And if the neighbors came in, for instance, and they were objecting to the side where you put that height, and there's other areas on the building that you could move that third floor, would the planning board be able to ask them to move it? And she said to me that you can ask, but we cannot design it. So there are limits to it. And I think one of your questions was, I think you had, is that, change of mind. What seemed to throw a curve, which I had said last meeting, was we had all agreed we were going to the planning board. The lawyers got into it. And that was the big issue. Then everybody started to doubt if we're doing the right thing. Well, let me clarify. Going to the classes, you always pick up stuff, and I've been to many. The site review process is not in the 40A. In fact, they've been having a bill to modify it to get it into the 40A, and they've been working on it for 10 years. So 40A regulations is not even involved with a site review process.
Could you remind people what 40A is, please?
40A is the zoning code for the state that we are able to amend our zoning, put in zoning. For uses is one for the special permit. Whenever you see uses, they mean a special permit. This is not a use that we're addressing. It has nothing to do with it, so wipe all those things out about the 40A. And I was very shocked that the attorney didn't bring that out first. He didn't, and all the information that I got anyway. So I think that I think that's a good thing that you've got for a different process. Whether we could implement it this quickly, I don't know. I already suggested to the Conservation Board that we combine the meetings, you know? And he said that's not workable, that we don't do it like that. So the process is open to the public and yourselves. You can come in and do your suggestions. We're all on the same team. There's no doubt about it. And it's not a power struggle. The power struggle is paying for this, my taxes. And there's a lot of sacrificing going on, believe me, and I hear it. So you know, you got to keep in mind that we're not pulling the power. At least I can say I'm not. And I'm sure I have trust in the other board members that they're not either. So, I think that we've rehashed this and rehashed this. I did some searching on communities that I know have gone to the site approval process for schools. Andover is one. Wayland is another. These are two communities that are not rural little towns. These are well-established, functioning land use departments that these people have, and they had it. The Wayland one was very interesting because I talked with the planner, and he said that we had it 6 weeks it took them. They had 3 consultants. They had a landscape architect, a traffic consultant, and the engineer for the drainage issues. The engineer for the drainage systems found an error in the calculations and saved Wayland a ton of money. It cost $10,000 for 3 consultants. So it isn't a tough thing to do, folks.
One thing that's come up tonight is the height of the building. So I have my concerns that comment was brought up because it wasn't brought up at the last meeting.
Can I address?
Well, I'd like somebody from.
The reason why I brought it up was I wanted you to know that the planning board, under our current bylaw structure in the town, as I see it, is the only board that can grant the waiver for that. Otherwise, the building inspector cannot sign off on it.
But what does, so I hear you, Chris, but how does that apply to us, this board, applying for site plan review? Are you giving?
Site plan review is the venue in which you get that waiver.
Right, but again, from a business perspective on our side, why would we even expose us, we can, again.
From a business perspective, David, if I may, on your side,
Yeah.
if the building inspector is doing his job in reading the bylaws as they are written, he has to say, you don't have a waiver to build a building this high, you can't build it that high.
May I say you won't find out about that until the very end of the process.
I'm sorry, what was
But
that,
if
Harry?
we, so my question, and listen, I'm not.
What I'm saying is it saves you money.
No, but wait, I want to get to the root of the issue. Because the comment, all of a sudden, we're talking now, we went from stormwater management, we went from water issues to the height of the building. That's what scares people, Chris.
Well, let me tell you how height of the
scaring me
building,
right now.
how the height of the building comes in and how it. The reason why I brought it up is so you can take that scare and get rid of it. We had a house that was built down on Central Street.
Oh, I know the house you're talking about.
There was a height issue there.
I know.
And rather than tell those people, they had to come back before the planning board, and we figured out a way so those people did not have to take the top floor of their house off, because that's what it is under the law. You gotta bring it down. They didn't have a waiver.
Right, so my question, easy question, are you in favor, are you okay with the height?
If I were to give my predisposition,
No one would give predisposition
All right,
in
well,
this
you know,
world.
Mr. Chairman.
No
if-
board
if-
member would
if-
give
if I may-
predisposition before a hearing may occur.
I have to concur with my chairman, having read now.
But why'd you bring it up? Because it
can't
scares
deliberate.
And I wanna thank you all,
deliberate
because you
here.
made me go and read all of the Attorney General's opinions.
Okay, all right, enough. Carl,
I
But
cannot
you're
give what my vote would be.
No, I'm not,
all right,
listen,
Carl.
I agree.
Could you address that?
Could you address any of that with the height restrictions in building a school, or?
I think your lawyers told you that the Dover Amendment allows the town to impose reasonable dimensional requirements for school projects.
And will it have to go before?
It doesn't
Plain-
say that. It doesn't say how the town
Okay.
imposes those reasonable dimensional requirements.
Okay.
You asked previously about, our track record in other projects, how many have gone, and it's about half. And so.
So you want to repeat that as half have gone to the planning board and half have not?
Right,
Okay.
formally gone to the planning board.
Formally.
Most all of them have gone informally.
Right.
And on the ones that didn't go formally, what was the relationship or the or the, not the relationship, I don't mean the relationship, I just mean the input and the process. What was that like, or what was it, what did it involve?
It
Varies?
basically covered all the
All their
areas
thoughts and
that
ways?
they're privy to.
Okay.
Traffic, height, dimensions.
So all their concerns are addressed, but in
Stormwater.
a more informal way.
With recommendations.
It's been our
Right.
experience as well.
Okay, Rob?
I wanna just, I'm not on the planning board, so I think I can say this. What I think I'm hearing them say, but it's just not coming across very clearly, is that for all practical purposes, the building height's not an issue. They're gonna grant you a waiver. They're trying to express that the process for getting the waiver just has to go through the planning board. It's the only, so they're just trying to explain it, and I think in explaining it, it comes out that raises flags, and I'm right there with you.
And that's the point in all of this.
But I
That's
think,
right.
but I,
We don't
so I-
have to go.
That's the point.
We don't
so I-
have to.
so I think.
Right, but Carl, you
makes
said
people uneasy.
if we don't do the site plan review, we don't have to go to the planning board for a waiver because of the Dover amendment.
Right. Again,
So-
towns can interpret that, it's a local decision. The building inspector in those towns, knowing that the projects had been reviewed by a building committee, knowing that they had been reviewed by a planning board, formally or informally, granted building permits.
Right.
So that's their way of enforcing the Dover Amendment of reasonable dimensional requirements.
Right, okay.
And, you know,
So just to finish what I was saying is that I think what I'm hearing the planning board say is, and I know this is gonna, they're saying, trust us, we're on your team, we're gonna work with you, and the process for on the building height, which is an easy one to point to, is gonna be a waiver, and this is how the process is gonna go. And I think it's boiling down to a real trust issue, and David will be out there holding another picket with you if the building height were challenged.
And I,
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
no, I'd just like to add that I've had dealings with both the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board. I trust them both. I've been in front of the Planning Board to look at LID changes, and they were totally cooperative. They're an elected board. It means the people have voted them in to protect the town.
Yep. Gary, I'll allow you, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment that
Sure.
this is not the first time that the height has come up. I was at a workshop, I believe, that you had at Pembroke, and at one time you had a tower on the library, and a participant brought up about height. And the next time I saw the set of plans, that tower was gone. So, but that sort of shows, you know, you can have all the second set of eyes that you need and engineers that you want, and a person from the town that was participating in a workshop brought up about the height. And the way it appeared to me, it was like, whoops, because the next time I saw the plans, that was gone.
The height stayed the same, it was the design.
Well, I realize
Well,
that.
I just, so we've crossed off any hope of A or B,
That's what I wanna know.
and we're just really, it's
All or
black or
nothing.
white, it's all or nothing, right?
Sounds like that to me. I mean,
That's.
I'd just like to make a comment,
Table right
after,
now.
if we do,
That's
If-
what, is
I
there
mean,
a
other
way to
towns
do
do it
it?
informally.
Other towns do it
If we do this-
informally, why can't we
Exactly.
do it informally?
Madam Chair, if we do this vote, we should probably take another vote to say that we're gonna go in front of the Conservation Commission for a stormwater review, and along with going in front of the Planning Board for informal review.
All right.
I mean,
So we have the
Wait,
first,
but
we have the
a
first vote
motion on the
first,
table
so.
right now that we're
And
discussing.
I would,
Mike's
I would,
talking.
I would,
No, Mike
I
has
would
something to
definitely,
say.
let's talk about that, because
Mhm.
you're on the right track.
Right.
But
Because-
I would
because
say let's
they-
vote for this one first,
We
let's
have to-
figure out the vote on this, and then, talk about, if there needs to be any talk about.
If
the next
there
part.
needs to be talk, because they may or may not put us on the agenda, so I mean,
Yeah.
that weighs in on, I think, on our vote. If they do not put us on the agenda
Mike?
for
Well,
informal.
the agenda
Jeff,
for the
hold on one
Concom.
second, hold on one second. Yes, Mike?
It's not on the agenda, you cannot vote
Oh.
on that.
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, I don't know, Mike.
we can next meeting,
We can-
depending
we
upon the
can-
outcome of this vote.
We can, our next meeting, yes, our next meeting is April 9th.
I think, I would suggest, personally, we table that part of it, because I think there might be a variation of that, because we are voting on whether we go to the planning board or not, so at least that portion of a second vote, as you suggested, is probably possible, because it's on the agenda of vote to go or not to go, and it doesn't say going formally or informally.
No, if that,
So, but the Concom, you're probably right, we're already going to the Concom, so that one doesn't matter.
Right,
So-
that we
so I
are
would
going
suggest
to that.
we move to vote and, on the first one, and then I would think that we could bring the second one up for, if needed, for an informal.
Mike, I don't think the Inspector General holds volunteer boards to strict parliamentary procedure, as you think.
well,
I mean, I've seen people brought in front of the Ethics Commission, and the Ethics Commission's kind of wave its hands and say,
What I'm saying, just in
well,
your
first of
support.
all, it's the Attorney General, and if they get a formal complaint, they act on volunteer boards. That's the only people that are subject to the open meeting laws, are volunteers.
and so, I mean,
Right.
Everybody is
If it's a willful,
and so they go back to town and say, you have to follow strict parliamentary procedures now.
no, they say you have to follow their regulations.
He's not making it clear.
What I'm saying
The-
is
the
I think that
open
your
meeting
suggestion, we can vote for this one because it's on the agenda of whether to do it, to submit it formally. I believe that we could have a second vote if needed to vote to submit it informally. And I think that your question on the Concom is already answered because we are submitting to the Concom. So I don't see.
You're talking about voting informally to the planning board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've always planned to do that, so I don't believe
Well,
we need to take a vote to
Oh, that's
vote-
true, too.
to do,
That
was
to do
the
it
first-
informally.
That's
I
true. No,
don't
you're
think
right.
we,
I stand corrected. I stand corrected.
so I don't think we need to do that,
But
because we are planning to
Michelle,
do
you
that.
said you didn't want a discussion on the process, and they're going
This-
into it now, and
this
I
is
would
a
like to
process
say
about-
something about that.
That he
the
would wanted
vote.
to bring up in conjunction with
Right.
what we're voting now.
I have carefully reviewed several years on the Attorney General's office. Retired at home, I can do it. There is nothing I found on the open meeting law that says you have to put a vote on the agenda.
Okay, Tilly, that is something that
Absolutely
you're gonna have to talk to
nothing.
Mike Farrell about, the town administrator,
Well,
because he's our liaison to town council.
If you got a problem with that, yeah.
You have to talk to Mike.
Well, the thing is that we're the members of the board. We should probably, if we had the time, like I do, check it out. I mean, I've seen, not to be personal or anything objecting to Mike, but I've seen many town administrators that forget it. I just would not.
Okay, so
Go
if you
there.
have an issue,
But
please take
the
it up with
thing
Mike
is-
Farrell. Tilly, the conversation, no, take it up with Mike. We're not
Well,
gonna
the thing is,
discuss it
you're
today.
following what he's doing right now.
You're right, because he's my liaison to town council.
All right, Madam
I
Chairman,
to
move the
vote.
question.
Yeah, move the question. Second.
Okay, so Chuck, before we do it, can you please read what the motion was, so we know what we're voting on, please?
I'm back about 9 pages. And I'm not a stenographer for anyway, so I'm just telling you straight up. I spend more time rewatching the votes. There was a motion made, suggested by the chair, made by Rob, second by George,
Okay.
to to submit the project to the planning board for a full site plan approval.
Formal.
Have DRA file the site plan
Correct.
or approval with the planning board. Okay,
Yes.
so, all in favor?
Can we have another discussion?
That was discussion.
That was
That was
discussion.
discussion.
Yeah,
He moved the vote.
we've already-
He
that
moved
was
the
our
vote.
discussion.
All right, so all in favor of filing the site plan review with the planning board? Okay. Those opposed? Abstained. Any abstain?
I'm going to abstain because of my initial comment. I don't think either way is right, and I'm doing it under protest because I think there should be a way in this town to make this work. So,
Okay. So,
what I believe.
the vote, the motion does not pass.
Now can we make that second motion or no? We're saying now.
We have to put it on the agenda for the next
Or
meeting.
do we even need to? Because we plan.
We don't need to, right.
We don't need to say that we're gonna go informally before the planning board, because
we
we've
are.
always planned to do that.
It's
That
in a
has-
number of your old meeting minutes.
Yes,
that
we've
it was
always planned
discussed
to
you
do
would
that,
make
so
it
I don't
anyhow.
believe we have to take a vote as a committee, because that has just always been part of the process that we had wanted to follow.
I think you should ask the planner who's present here how that's gonna work.
We'll
Guys.
let Carl take that up
Yeah.
with him, I would suggest, because that's his job.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
make a motion to adjourn.
Is
Second.
there a second?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the public for coming.